material contained in the Diverging Clear Podcast is for informational purposes only. The ideas and opinions expressed in the podcast does not represent the views or missions of the National Rail Passenger Corporation or Amtrak or the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission. This is a Diverging Clear Podcast.
Approach Diverging, milepost 20.04. Diverging Clear, milepost 20.06. Welcome to Diverging Clear, your transportation podcast, with your hosts, William Moore and Jermaine Walker.
Welcome to the Diverging Clear Podcast, episode number 2, Logistics Defying Logic. I'm your host, William Moore, and I'd first like to say thank you for tuning in, and also don't forget to click the like and subscribe button for this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Anchor, and any other platform that you listen to or watch your favorite podcast on. I'll be rolling solo on this episode while my co-host Jermaine Walker tackles some other endeavors. So let's get right into it. Why is this episode titled Logistics Defying Logic? What is logistics? I could go into this long, drawn out definition, but that's a little bit too boring. Simplified, excuse my language, logistics is moving shit from one place to another. Now, like I said, excuse my language, but basically, when you have to move anything from, whether it's from moving your couch to a chair in your living room from one corner to the other, that's logistics. Whether it's moving groceries from the car to the house, when you put 1,000 bags on one hand and put the last bag on your thumb, that's logistics. But in a grand scheme of things, logistics is the movement of goods or services or raw materials or anything from everything you get from Amazon, that's logistics. When you put your order in, it's there the next day or sometimes within a couple hours. That's logistics. So there's many ways to accomplish this, as I just mentioned. The ways that are most common is airplanes, which we use. That's logistics, moving us from, say, flying from Chicago to Cancun or flying Chicago to Dubai, or that's logistics. That's typically what we think of with airplanes. Trucks, We all know trucks. We've been stuck in traffic behind them. We done been almost ran off the road by them. But trucks are dominant mode of moving of logistics in this country. Then of course you got trains, kind of my favorite way, and I think the best way to do stuff, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And then you got ships, the big boats that carry a lot of this freight or the goods, or they're in actuality they are the backbone of our logistics network. They just don't get the glory because we don't see these huge ships on a regular basis, especially where I'm at in the Midwest. The people on the East and West Coast ports, they may see them, but ships are a huge part of the logistics chain. That's why last year when that ship got stuck in the Suez Canal, we saw the ripple effect it had on the world economy, not just the U.S. economy, the world economy, because so many goods move in that manner. So in this episode, I'm going to touch on three of these foremost: the trucks, the trains, and the ships. But the defying logic part goes to the trains. As American ports, the ports I just mentioned on the East Coast, so you talk about New York, you talk about Norfolk, Virginia, they've been doing a lot of port upgrades. You talk about Wilmington, you talk about Savannah, Georgia. Those are some of the major East Coast ports. You talk about New Orleans, you talk about Mobile on the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf Coast. And then on the West Coast, you got, of course, the huge port, the busiest port in the U.S., which is the combination of L.A. and Long Beach, also known as LAX. That huge port complex. And you also have some smaller ports. You got Oakland, you got Portland, you have SeaTac, which is also Seattle, Tacoma. That's a combination. That's a major port towards the northwest portion of the Pacific. And then, of course, you get into Canada, you got Vancouver, you got Prince Rupert. So those are the ports that, that we kind of talk about when we're talking about the ports. So as these various ports continue to break records, month after month, they're shattering their previous year's record, which that previous year shattered that previous. So we're seeing this growth of products, imports, mainly containers, which I'll show you a picture of here in just a second. These ports are growing, and the inbound traffic is off the charts. It's off the charts. However, it's not translating to other forms of transportation, which is what we'll dig into, which is where I'm talking about logistics defying logic. So one of the things that, I want to just point out as American ports, as I mentioned, continue to break records. I want to show you this real quick. This is what comes into the ports. It looks like a standard semi-truck, but this is what they typically call a 40-foot container. These come in on boats. If you can see, it looks like almost a Lego set, but those wheels are separate from that container. Those containers are what come in at the ports. So when we show this, I'm showing you this. How do we get these? To stop moving with these trucks. Trucks are very important, and I'll get back to why I'm mentioning how do we get those 40-foot containers from moving on these, and I'll explain why that's very important as to why we need to get those containers off of the road, because that's the primary way that all of this traffic is moving right now. It's moving out of the ports by truck, and it shouldn't be. And it's causing tremendous amounts of environmental damage, traffic jams. If you saw a couple stories they did when the ports were pretty much log jam. It was trucks idling for hours, days, trying to get in and out of the ports, just doing a massive job of environmentally destroying those areas and those neighborhoods surrounding the ports. But my main point here is how do we get these containers from off of the roads and onto these? This here is a picture of a double stack train, that 40-foot container I showed you earlier. That 40-foot container can travel by rail. It should travel by rail. I'll break that down here in a little bit, but We need to get those 40-foot containers off of this road and onto this mode of transportation. As you can see just from this shot here, you're looking at an excess of probably 30 trucks, and this isn't the whole train. This is the literally the head end of the train. Right here in this little block here, it said probably that's taking at least 30 to 40 trucks off the road just in this block of cars. And this train, trust me, was much longer than this. So how do we get those containers onto here? Why aren't they there now? That's the question. And another reason why I'm going to bring that up is because we want the containers on these trains, because right now there's a shortage of these. So with the shortage of truck drivers, and we're moving everything by truck, it causes a major problem. Primarily in the time it takes us to get goods, and also the cost to transporting these transportation for these goods. When there's a shortage of drivers, the cost, each driver that a trucking company has becomes a premium. Meaning that they're going to take the highest bidder to move their goods. Or they're going to choose the highest bidder to move their goods, which now in turn drives the price up of our consumer goods. People want to say, oh, well, the shipping rate doesn't. It does. It directly affects everything that you purchase and that you buy. If you ever bought a car, and a new car, and heck, even they even have them on used cars nowadays, because sometimes, depending on the used cars are shipped. If you look on the sticker, there's a fee on there for usually anywhere between $1,500 to $2,500 per car that's charged to move it from the plant, from the point of production to delivery. And you pay that. The consumer pays that. That's not, it's embedded in the price of your car, but you pay that freight to get your car to where you want it at. So with the shortage of the drivers, we have got to figure out why we're not putting them here. It just doesn't make sense. And we'll get into that here in a bit here. But the primary purpose of me showing this is for the fact to just give you a visualization that we're doing things that are legitly defying logic. It doesn't make sense, and I'll get into that here in just a second. But I want to bring up a couple articles that were I've been kind of investigating this for quite a while, because one of the things I do is I watch the weekly carloads for American railroads, Canadian railroads, the railroads down in Mexico. So I watched this just to see where the trends are, what's trending, that is petroleum being shipped less, automobiles, are those numbers going up, or raw material? I look into that different stuff. And the one thing I kept watching is I would read an article about the Port of Savannah set record for the month of April of this month, of this particular month, or this port is showing record growth, a record month for container traffic as compared to last year. They've increased their load. So I'm watching all of this stuff, but the one thing that's standing out to me is this. So this is from March 31st, 2022. The previous week, carload volumes came out. So the headline says, U.S. rail carloads held steady. Intermodal volume fell in week 12. That's troubling when you see in the ports intermodal, which is what's the capability of bringing those, you have an option. That's why I call it intermodal. You can use either a truck, or you can use train to primarily come in on ships. So those are the three different modes that you can use. When they get off of the ship, they're not going to the rail. And that's troubling, because they should be going to the rail. They definitely should be going to the rail, but they're not. So this has gotten the attention of publications like the Wall Street Journal. Matter of fact, John Oliver just did a whole story on the trucking. on the truck driver shortage, and he talked about some of these things. It was a very interesting piece. If you get a chance, check it out on YouTube. But he breaks down why as I mentioned, the driver shortages are taking place. He talks about it and does a real good in-depth breakdown of it. But I want to read this article here from the Wall Street Journal. So just bear with me for a second. I want to try to, this gives kind of a overview of what I'm discussing when it comes to the shortage or questioning why these containers and this traffic isn't moving on the rail. So this is the Wall Street Journal article. This is from February 21st of 2022. Says the U.S. import surge is skipping the train. Shippers are increasingly choosing trucks over railroads because of supply chain bottlenecks and the need for speed, pushing more freight onto the country's highways. Tens of thousands of container loads of cargo that would normally move on railroads are being hauled on American roads each month as companies look to get around continuing supply chain bottlenecks. U.S. intermodal transports, in which railroads carry containers and truck trailers, were down nearly 12% in the first 6 weeks of this year from a year ago, according to the Association of American Railroads, after tumbling in the second half of last year, even as retailers and manufacturers rushed to bring in goods. Trucking and rail industry officials say demand to move freight 500 miles or more, which is often done by rail, remains strong as companies restock depleted inventories. But shippers are more often than usual choosing highways over railroads because of shortages of labor, equipment, and warehouse space across the supply chains can create unpredictable delays. Railroads should be seizing the day and winning more business, says Paul Svenland, Chief Executive of Bensenville-based STG Logistics. His firm has been placing more cargo than usual on trucks because he can't find enough of the containers railroads need to most easily handle such shipments, he said. Intermodal transport, which uses trucking for the final leg of delivery, is slower and more complicated than long-haul trucking, but it is also cheaper and less damaging to the environment. Lawrence Gross, president of the Gross Transportation Consulting, said intermodal loads have lost a little over 1% of their market share to long-distance trucking since the COVID-19 pandemic began. Based on the current freight volumes, that translate to about 30,000 additional long-distance truck moves each week, he said. John Gray, Senior Vice President for Policy and Economics at the AARA, said freight railroads could comfortably handle an extra 20 to 30,000 intermodal loads a week. I am confident there is a lot more capacity out there, Mr. Gray said. U.S. supply chains are struggling to ingest record cargo volumes that began surging into the country in the summer of 2020. A few months after the COVID-19 pandemic triggered lockdowns when consumers switched their spending from services to goods, imports were up 14% in 2021 over the year before at the nation's busiest container port complex at Los Angeles and Long Beach, clogging port terminals, rail yards, truck yards, and warehouses. So next thing I want to show you here is the just showing the monthly intermodal volumes carried by U.S. Rail. So as you can see, you see dips and it's not terrible, but it should be a progressive a progressive trend upward instead of these ebbs and flows and dips and more dips here in the 2022. It's not. It should be a growth rate, not this fluctuation that we're seeing that this chart indicates. Just another part of this article I'm going to read. It also says in July, some railroads restricted cargo into Chicago for days until the bottlenecks could be cleared, pushing shippers to trucking for long distance routes to inland warehouses. The period coincided with massive bottlenecks at U.S. ports where container ships at the port complex in Southern California waited weeks or months to unload. To make up for lost time, some shippers chose to pay more for certainty and speed of trucking, said Bob Beesterfield, chief executive of freight broker C.H. Robinson Worldwide. If they're waiting for days and weeks to get product out of the port and into their warehouse, they're looking for the fastest way to do that, and ultimately that is almost exclusively by truck. So as we, I'm not going to keep reading all the article. I think you're kind of getting a picture of where we're going here. And so one thing I do want to show also here is what the ports are doing. So here you see the Georgia Port Authority advances capacity expansion plans. This is primarily at the Port of Savannah, and also they have an inland container port that they're expanding dramatically right now. And then you also have this here, where in Virginia, they're adding to their port capacity to handle container cranes. To handle containers, they're adding more and more ship-to-shore container cranes that can help unload these ships quicker and get these products out. But as we're talking about that, we're not talking about the railroads expanding their capacity to be able to handle this additional traffic. Back in the summer of 2020, the couple railroads shut down intermodal terminals. As a result of these bottlenecks and these supply chain issues, one was on the NS in Pennsylvania. I did a podcast talking about that, and the other one was here in Chicago, in the Chicago area, the Union Pacific's Global 3 terminal. Both of those had been shut down, and then UP also had shut down Global 1, which is right on the edges of downtown Chicago. They had shut that down. Global 3 was they were forced to reopen Global 3 back in July 2021. And then Global 1 just recently reopened here. I want to say it was probably towards the end of the, maybe October. They reopened Global 1 after it had been closed for about a year. So they added capacity, but they haven't expanded to handle this additional traffic. That's troublesome, because at the end of the day, the ports are investing in this infrastructure to move additional containers. I don't know how responsive the railroads have really been to adapt to expand their capacity in the same way or sense, or even they haven't expanded expanded their capacity, or even to the other point of their shipping lanes, their lanes, to handle this additional traffic. So when I speak of shipping lanes, especially on the railroads for intermodal, so they have what they consider pair points. Pair points at two locations. So I'll give a quick example. Quick example would be Chicago to, let's say Chicago to Pittsburgh. That would be a shipping lane. Another shipping lane would be Chicago to, let's say, Kansas City, or Chicago to, I'm basing everything out of Chicago. Let's say Chicago to LA. That's a huge lane. But there's smaller lanes that they could attack, but they won't. Let's say Trains wrote an excellent article last year talking about the railroads could compete in the less than 500 mile shipping lane. So let's say an example would be, say, Chicago to, let's say Chicago to, I'm drawing a blank here, sorry about that. So let's say Chicago to Louisville. That would be a less than 500 mile route that theoretically the railroads should be able to compete with. There's a lot of traffic that goes between those two routes. They could, but they don't. Another destination pair, Chicago to St. Louis. You could run that, but they don't. It's often truck. There's not direct routes from Chicago to Florida. There's not direct, there's kind of cumbersome ways that they have to go about it. it's just a lot of opportunities where it feels like the railroads are not picking up the slack or not even interested in picking up. They'll max out their trains to these certain destination points, but they won't take a smaller train. Let's say Chicago to let's say Chicago to Buffalo, New York. I think they do run that, so that might not be a good example. But the shorter distance lanes, they're not interested in, which is why we get all the congestion with the trucks, because the trucks make that, have to make those 300 to 400 mile runs when you could possibly move, 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 containers with one crew that distance, but railroads are not doing it. And the reason, the big question is why? Why aren't the railroads doing that? Why aren't they taking up the burden? As I mentioned before, with the truck driver shortages, why aren't they taking off the burden of adjusting themselves to be able to handle the additional traffic? I know a lot of it has to do with the capital investment, the intermodal terminals. But let's be honest here. This prediction for this growth has been out there for years. We knew this was going to come. The pandemic kind of kicked it in a hyperdrive, but all the forecasts said that this was going to happen. It's going to continue to grow. So why are the railroads kind of neglecting and not making the investment? It's not making sense. I recently read an article. The NS is starting to put carload traffic at the head end of their intermodal to run kind of an express expedited service that boxcars will be added in the intermodals and taken to a rail transfer facility where the boxcars will be unloaded to trucks. So they're trying this, and then they're trying it in a different lane. And it's like, why are we trying this stuff in other lanes? It can be done. It should be done. If you look over in Europe, and I had an interesting conversation with Mr. Solomon from Trans, and we were discussing this, and he's got an extensive background on the freight operations, European freight operations. And what he expressed to me was that over in Europe, their trains are shorter, but the freight that they're moving is highly valuable. So they get the premium loads, as opposed to where the truck drivers get the not so hot items, as we like to call it. We describe hot as the premium. This is what, this is who pays the freight, the quote unquote say who pays the freight. So over there, the railroads move the hot stuff. In America, it's opposite. The railroads move what the truckers don't want. Is essentially how you can categorize it, because when you look at it, it's not the same. We don't get those high priority shipments because of the unreliability. Our supply chain network really needs to be developed here, where we can unload containers in an efficient manner, distribute them to where they need to go, and make things better. Because right now, I'll shortly here, I'll be driving into work, and I'll be looking at the trucks and the containers and all of this stuff, but trying to get in and out of the city. And it's like, I always ask myself, are they going to, let's say, Global One? Or are they going to the final destination? Because a lot of this stuff, it can be moved by rail, but it's not. We have to look at a different way to design our logistics network, because yes, the warehouses are going up, which is a good thing, to help with the supply chain, to adapt and help with the supply chain issues. But we're missing a crucial link here. That crucial link that's missing is the railroads. This is numerous. Everyone can see it. They're missing a golden opportunity, and the question comes back to why. I'll make one point. The one thing that I'll say is, because right now with PSR, precision scheduled railroading, the idea of precision scheduled railroading has some good elements in it. Don't get me wrong, but it's not focused on volume growth. They're not interested in adding more volume to get more revenue. They're interested in hauling, and all of the reports that tell you, even that report that came out from the DOT and the railroads were a bit pissed off about, showed that they weren't focused on volume growth. They were focused on raising the price. So move less, get paid more. That's good for the railroads and their shareholders and their, the stock prices, but it's not good for our overall logistics network. It's not good for our overall supply chain. It's not. They can get the money. They can still get the money. It may take a little bit more work and effort, but it can be done in a better way than what we're doing right now. With the primary focus being on shareholder value and not on shipper value, or not national value as to the need that the railroads provide. Just without calling out any certain railroads, it just seems like a lot of people are asleep at the wheel. I'm not gonna, some railroads are doing some good things. I just think more can be done. I'm not necessarily saying that what they're doing is bad, but I just think more can be done and more of an effort can be put in to capturing some of this volume and helping to distribute it and helping to become a strong leg of the supply chain. Because what we saw during the pandemic was if truckers get sick, our store shelves go bare, or they risk going bare. We gotta have some type of backup. We gotta have some type of redundancy to be able to handle this traffic where the trucks are only handling the last mile. That's what this mode of transportation was designed for. It was designed for come in off the ship, go on the train handles the long distance, get it off the train, put it on the chassis, driver takes it to the delivery point, and then vice versa. Driver picks it up from the production point, bring it to the train puts it on a railroad, puts it on the train takes it to the next port unloads it, puts it on the ship. That's how it was designed to work. It's not working that way. And there's, like I said, there's a ton of other reasons it can go into, but I just think the philosophy of the railroads needs to change. It needs to kind of start shifting in a way to adjust to volume growth within your precision scheduled railroading models. That has to occur, and it has to occur soon, because they're going to miss a golden opportunity here. And a lot of times, once that stuff goes to trucking, it doesn't come back. And that's the fear that I being in the rail industry, I just see us, having a golden opportunity that we could be missing and not taking advantage of these additional volumes. Just trying, instead of, like I said, a simplified version of what I'm saying is raise the prices, don't increase the amount of traffic you move. And I don't think that's not going to be good for anybody except for that particular company's shareholders in the long run. Which at the end of the day, they can dump and they can sell their stock, cash out, and then we'll be still left in shambles trying to figure out this logistics defying logic. All right, that's my filibuster on this conversation. So if you have any questions or problems, any suggestions, any type of your opinion on this subject, like I said, for me it's not a negative, it's not a strike against the railroads. I just think we got to start thinking a little bit more outside the box. Okay, how can we move this additional? How can we create newer lanes that compete with trucks? How can we move goods? Because it can be done. It is done every day. But how can we scale this so that it can be profitable and we can get these trucks off the road and start to getting it back to last mile delivery, not the entire route delivery, which will bring additional shareholder value and the amount of goods moved and prices and shipping rates charged for those additional volumes, instead of lowering your volumes and jacking the prices up on the shippers. And then, all of us feel the brunt of that when that occurs. So, I think that's it, man. I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this episode up. Logistics defying logic. And like I said, it comes back to it. I was kind of doing my little pre-show build-ups to it, and I played the House of Cards theme for a reason. On on some of my build-ups to this production, because to be honest with you, it feels like our logistics network right now is a house of cards. I don't want to think that it's not a negative strike against things, but I just want to make it clear. We have a lot of things we need to clean up with our logistics and our supply chain. Right now, I feel like we're on a house of cards. It kind of looks good. It kind of looks sturdy. But one big strong wind, like another pandemic, and the whole dang thing will come tumbling down. So we definitely got to be aware of that. We definitely got to be prepared to do the right thing and be able to adjust and start doing it now. We can't wait till the next pandemic, and we can't wait till the next global crisis hit and then start trying to react. We got to be proactive in this. We have to be proactive for the sake of our nation, for the sake of our families. You know, we're going to depend on this. We depend on logistics to take care of our families, to take care of the things that we need. It's important. It can't be put out to the back burner. So, you know, we have to keep working at this. We got to keep talking about it. We got to start, and actually, we got to stop talking about it and be about it. Let's just make it clear. This affects everything from the price of the bar of soap you buy to the cost of the cost of a pack of chicken drumsticks. Everything is affected by this, and we need to start paying attention to it so that we can take care of what we need to take care of. So that's logistics defying logic. Or more stuff should be on the trains and less stuff on the highways. It's defying logic that it's not. All right, thank you for tuning in this afternoon for episode 2 of the Diverging Clear Podcast, Logistics Defying Logic. I just kind of broke down a little bit of what the title of that video was. Logistics Defying Logic, but we can actually get back on the logical side of things. This isn't a dead end situation. There's lots of things that can be done to improve this. And some of the things are taking place. Hopefully, with this infrastructure bill, some of these things will come to fruition. We'll see how money is distributed, if it's going to address a lot of these needs the proper way. This isn't a Band-Aid situation. This is a full-on surgical repair for our logistics network, and that needs to take place. And we need to start using some of our tools a lot better to get this accomplished properly. So, like I said, thank you for tuning in to episode 2 of the Diverging Clear Podcast, Logistics Defying Logic. I'm your host, William Moore. Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to click that subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Anchor, and any other platform that you might listen to or watch your podcast. Once again, thank you for coming out. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to share this with your other friends and your buddies. And I got a comment that I needed to kind of simplify this, because if you wasn't in transportation or logistics, you wouldn't understand what the heck I was talking about. So I tried to take that approach here. So let me know what you think of it. So thank you for tuning in. You guys have a good day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Diverging Clear is sponsored by EME Rail Solutions, LLC. We don't own rail cars, locomotives, or tracks, but if you do, we provide cutting-edge solutions to maximize your assets. Visit us at emerail.net to learn more.
The Diverging Clear Podcast is also brought to you in part by Precision Logistics, LLC. Precision Logistics, LLC, meeting tomorrow's logistical needs today. Visit www.precisionlogisticsllc.info to learn how.